This is the final session of the 2013 VISTA Expo and Symposium. It is a design goal of, I know it's 4 long days, but it is a design goal of ours to make the Expo irresistible from beginning to end. And to that end, just like malls work very hard to carefully place anchor stores at the far ends of their mall to maximize traffic across the whole length, so we too plan all year what are going to be the first and last sessions to anchor the Expo that will be irresistible enough to make people weep and gnash their teeth in frustration if they arrive late or have to leave early. And to that end, we arrive at what we hope is among the most exciting things we have to show this year. So kudos to you who stuck it out. We have what we hope will be a treat. Dr. Tweed and one of his ninjas will be... This is Gonzales of Oroville Hospital. They will be showing you some new developments in web-oriented user interfaces for VISTA, and I think you will very much want to see this. Take it away, Dr. Tweed.
Thank you, Rick. I'm first. A round of applause for this guy. Take it away. So you've had 4 days of death by PowerPoint showing what's possible. I'm the only one, and me and Zach are the only ones stupid enough to actually show stuff for real. So this is where we put our lives in danger. One get out clause. Last night I discovered that, having always said how wonderful Apple laptops were, this decided to start intermittently locking up. So if it locks up, then Zach's machine will come to the rescue. So hopefully it'll keep, I think it's a temperature thing. So I wanted to give a bit of context here, first of all, to what you're going to see. So I've been working with Zach at Oroville. We're focused now entirely on a 100% JavaScript stack, stuff I've been kind of talking about. And just to give a bit of background, so JavaScript, for those of you who don't know, hopefully you do know, it grew up in the browser. There's been attempts to get it out of the browser and replace it with something else, and many people have thought it's a bit of a toy. But there's a number of guys, these are some of the main names, who've really turned it into a very respectable language now. And you know, I think many people even now don't realize that it's no longer limited to just the browser. If it was just sitting in the browser, this would be very interesting. But through a technology called Node.js, it's now been brought to the server side. It's a project by a guy called Ryan Dahl, who's kind of faded into the background. It's an open source product. It runs on all platforms, Mac, Windows, Linux. Joined to the company that sponsor it, and it's just become a huge phenomenon. And I think it's one of the most exciting areas in IT to be working in these days. It's got a number of capabilities all built in. It will provide you with a web server. It will behave as a web server, fully fledged, that you then write the behavior of the web server in JavaScript. It's got support for something called WebSockets, more of that later. And a bit like the iPhone, where they say there's an app for everything. In Node.js, there's a module for pretty much everything. There's a huge development community out there, hugely active, and there's some cool stuff. And as of a few months ago, it was announced that there was an improved technology at the VA. So if you base popularity of computer languages by the languages used in open source projects in GitHub, it's for a couple of years now, it's been by far and away the most popular language. And it really is becoming a dominant language out there. The great thing is about it, you learn one language, now you can write the front end and you can write the back end of the application. And JSON, we've heard this talk about JSON. JSON is a way of describing, it grew up in JavaScript, JavaScript object notation. It's a way of describing objects. And JSON is not only part of JavaScript, it's also becoming the kind of basic unit of storage of what are called document databases. And these are the two big ones. Mongo is really becoming a major force. And basically, if you're a JavaScript guy, work with Node.js, the database you'll expect to use is Mongo these days. It's just becoming a given. But we can now access a month's database, GTM or cache, as if it is also a document database. And that goes back to what I was saying in one of the panel sessions earlier. I'll start with these two first, actually. The interface for it first developed on cache. It actually first developed on something called Globals DB, which is a free database from InterSystems. It's not open source, but it's free. And it's basically the core database engine of cache. Everything else stripped out. And it was actually by me, I lobbied them, persuaded them, you guys ought to put a Node.js interface into that, because this would be very cool. And it was actually my colleague from Gateway, Chris Month, who wrote it for them. He, by working with the systems group there, he's got access to the very low-level APIs. They're not publicly documented. So he's used a very low-level interface. They've now moved that, since it was basically the core cache engine, they've moved it into cache. So any version of cache from about 2008 dot whatever, I think 2007 dot whatever, is capable of running this. You just get a later version, a recent version. You download the free version, a single-user version, take out the interface file, put it up in your system, and away you go. With all the new versions, it's just there. And it's an official interface, the system's official interface. David Wixell, who's down the back there, he did a reverse engineer of that interface, API compatible with GTM. And whichever you use, the one for GTM or the one for cache, they interface with the call interface with cache or GTM. They allow you to access data storage, globals, or functions. Okay. And at the Node.js layer, they both look identical. So you can swap one out from the other, and they look identical. I've then abstracted that further so that if you've got a JSON object, so you're working in Node.js, it's a simple little JSON object here, it's an array of objects, and we set a pointer to it. So here we are, this is JavaScript, okay? So here, this is probably recognizable, we're pointing to a physical global here with a subscript. And then we say, we point to the next subscript there and say, set document, that object, bang, just creates that. It just does that automatically. So that's in effect a subtree, a global subtree representation of that object. And it's bidirectional. So if you take the it's global, and in JavaScript you say get document, it'll pull that blob out, that subtree, and it'll return the JSON back to you. Get document, set document. My kind of walking proof of concept for this is my son, who's down there, Simon, who knows nothing about months, still. Well, maybe he knows a little bit more after this, but not very much. And he's been able to help Jack at Oracle developing. He works at the JavaScript level, and he's setting and getting documents, and it just works. So the other cool thing you can do is use that function interface. And let's face it, you're not going to rewrite Vista at that low level. You might use it for augmenting it, but a lot of the stuff is already there. And if we just put wrapper functions around it, the JavaScript guy can now access those functions. And of course, what they want to get back isn't just a string or something. They'll want to get the results back as JSON. So let's say we have this, get patient vitals. The trick is that this guy, this is a wrapper around the core Vista stuff. And the trick is this wrapper will then dump the array of results into a temporary global. As soon as it's in a temporary global, now the JavaScript guy can say, just get document that, and bing, it's a JSON object. And now we've got a JSON interface to legacy functions, just like that. So let's now move to the application development. These are browser-based applications. I'm calling them browser-based for a very specific reason. It used to be that we call them web applications, and that was really because they were using the HTTP protocol, the protocol of the web, it's request response protocol. And that limits applications in many, many ways. Along comes WebSockets, which is an HTML5 technology. that gives us client server, event-driven client server in the browser. Changes everything. WebSockets put in place a bidirectional socket connection between the browser and the back end. And it's event-driven. And if Node.js is at the back end, it's event handling in JavaScript at the front end, event handling in JavaScript at the back end. The nice thing about this is there's no more polling. What do I mean by that? Let's take the example of the Oracle scheduler. So one of the concepts there is we wanted to use Node and WebSockets for that, because two schedulers working in the hospital, looking at the same clinic, same time, one books into the 11 a.m. slot, instantly the other sees the appointment's gone. Instantly. The only way to have done that previously would be to have the browser polling back. Now, here's the question: how often do you poll? If you poll too frequently, you're just wasting bandwidth. Has anything changed? No. Has anything changed? No. Has anything? And you've got loads and loads of browsers doing that all over the hospital, and you're flooding the network with. Yeah. If you don't do it frequently enough, then they book the 11 a.m. slot, and they see it's still free. They book the 11 a.m. slot, now you double the slot. You can never get polling right. This stuff changes it all. As soon as it happens, it triggers an event at the back end, fires the UI change to both simultaneously. And in fact, to all that are using that application. This changes everything. This turns the browser into the equivalent of the CPRS client. So add it all together, JavaScript in the browser, WebSockets, JavaScript at the back end, JSON, and WebSockets. What do you move over the WebSockets between the browser and the back end? JSON. And we've got JSON being stored now in the database. This is a 100% JavaScript JSON environment. Put it all together, and we've called it, or I've called it, EWD.js. So it's a new breed of the EWD technology. So it's a framework for JavaScript applications. 100% JavaScript, fully WebSockets, no more HTTP, abstracted the database to be JSON. This is how it looks. So, unfortunately, I'm still giving you death by PowerPoint here, but I promise not too much longer. But just to give you an idea, when you see this stuff working, this is what's going on in the background. We've got this master Node.js process. It handles the web server interface and the WebSocket interface. So the request comes in from the browser over a WebSocket, and it immediately puts the request on the queue. As soon as it puts it on the queue, that triggers an event to process the queue. The dispatcher sends that request out to one of a pool of child processors, also Node.js processors, which have been pre-forked, and you decide how many there's going to be. Each one of those uses the interface to GTM or cache. These are in-process connections. As soon as a request is passed to one of them, it takes itself off the available pool. So any one of these at any one time can only process one request at a time. Significance of that, Node.js is usually about what's called asynchronous programming with non-blocking I/O. And basically, it's a nightmare to deal with when you're a developer. Trust me. This is fully asynchronous, but you'll never look at that. Don't worry, I've done all of that. In here, you write this JavaScript here. You can write it now fully synchronously. So it's nice and easy to write, nice and easy to understand. You can do that because at any one time it's only handling one guy's request. It's not going to hold anybody else's stuff with this. So here's our developers. Here's Zach or Simon or me working on this. So what do? We write three things. The markup, the HTML and the JavaScript that define the UI in the browser. Another lot of JavaScript in the browser which handles the event handling, which is going to control the dynamics of this application. These applications are a single page of HTML that define the entire UI in one go. Everything else after that is all event-driven, showing stuff, hiding it, popping stuff up. It's all there already. And then the back end is where you interact with the database, process the incoming messages from the browser, package up the results, send them as JSON back to over there, and that then updates the UI. So let's just take you through the scenario. Event occurs, maybe press a button. You create a JSON message as a signal, or maybe it's a form, so it's the fields off that form. That's sent as a WebSocket message with a JSON payload. You define a type for that. That's up to you, the developer. So this is Rob's message. It gets dispatched to the child process, triggers an event in there, says, I've received a Rob's message, JSON object here. Well, in that case, I better set documented into the database. Or maybe I get documented. It doesn't matter. You will do all the stuff that you need to do, validate it, whatever. And now you've got a JSON object back, and you just return it back into there. That triggers an event handler that says, the Rob's message has come back. I better modify the UI. And the application is just run and run and run. All event-driven, all JSON, front to back. Not only that, it includes a built-in, secured, JSON-based web service interface. So you can take any back-end module that you've written, and it is immediately available as a JSON-based web service. So you invoke it in a standard web service way, and back will come a JSON payload, an application / not XML, but JSON. It's automatically secured by the very same mechanism that Amazon Web Services use. I won't go into detail for something called HVAC SHA-256. I've chosen it because, in my opinion, if it's good enough for Amazon Web Services to deliver all their services, it's going to be pretty good. And it's an exact emulation because I used it before for something else that was an emulation of their simple DB database. So this gives you a very lightweight, very high performance, peer-to-peer access between EWD.js systems. And this is what they can look like. So that's context of the VA maybe. Here's one VA center running this systems. And at this point, you want to do cross-scheduling to another clinic over in this one. And it uses that web service request into that one. And that then processes it in the normal way. And back comes JSON to here. Now you've got your JSON. You don't care whether it came from there or there. It's JSON. And you send it back over here. The whole thing is secured by one simple thing. It's just like Amazon Web Services. When you sign up, you get an ID and a secure key. They have your secure key. You have your secure key. Nobody else should. Not a good idea. Same thing. You allocate a secure ID over here. That's what the key and an ID here. And you register it over here. And the registration is through EWD.js. As soon as you've got that, this just works. Just works. And, you know, I can't see why you couldn't have 130 systems like this with shared keys. That's not that many to manage. You could have every one of them working peer-to-peer. Straight out of the box. And here's something I mentioned before, that as soon as you work in Node.js and JavaScript, you're in this event-driven world, and you can generate custom events. So let's say we have this add medication. Here's our object of parameters. And you would write it like this. You do whatever you have to do for the coding bit in here. And then you say, well, we're going to have to emit an orders event. We're going to have to emit a stock control event. And probably many, many more. And over here, that then triggers an event handler. It says, on audit, fire off this, what's called a callback function. You pass it in the audit parameters. Now, that could be running on the same machine. It could be running on a different machine. It doesn't matter anymore. And this could trigger another set of events. And another set of events. And they just cascade and cascade. And here's our stock control. And you can hook these things up. And there's your business logic now described as a series of linked events.
It's an extensible framework.
Where would we put that before?
Yes.
So this just fits naturally. It's like, you know, a seamless, natural progression, and will coexist with what we've got and extend into this new world, in my opinion. It's Apache 2 licensed. You just say npm install EWD gateway and away you go. That's all you have to do. And with that, let's now have a look at an application. I'm going to kick off with this. This is where I really take my life in my hands. And get into that. Go in here. So I'm going to So I'm just looking, I'm pointing to a machine. Actually, this is a machine in my home in the UK. And what we've done at Oracle is decided, well, we're wanting to build these web applications, JavaScript applications, but we want to have a consistent look and feel. And the users increasingly are not only desktop users, but they're using tablets and they're using phones. And of course, One way to do it would be to use something like XJS, maybe for the desktop, Essential Touch for the mobiles. But now you've got to write two different applications to do the same thing. What's started to happen is the rise of new frameworks, JavaScript frameworks, which are called responsive frameworks. And the big name in that is called Bootstrap. You may hear it called Twitter Bootstrap because it was came from some of the guys on Twitter. And it allows you to define, really clever stuff. It allows you to define a user interface which will automatically adapt and respond to the width of the device. And you can control it so that when it comes up on a phone, everything stacks up. If it's got a bit more room on the tablet, it'll spread it out, and on a desktop, it'll spread it out even further. All in your control, really simple. It's all cascading style sheet controlled. So we decided, well, let's standardize on that, see how we do. And we wanted then a common user interface for all the applications that we build around this. So for things like logging in, it's probably got a crisis of horrible. Oh, it's not you.
It's back here.
All right. What was I saying? So, yes, so we, all the applications, you need to log into them, access code, verify code. Many of them, the first thing you do is select a patient, and then you do stuff, you look at various things. So we've been progressively developing, moving through the UI, and then saying, hang on, all of our applications will use that, template it, abstract it, move forward down the line a bit more, start to see the common trends, and gradually building up this common template stuff. So over here on the left, you'll see 3 files, just 3 files. I'm going to create a new application. So I want to create a directory, and we'll call this Expo. There it is. And I'm going to drag 2 files in there. This one called app.js, which is my application level JavaScript controller, and this guy called template.html, which is my user interface. I'm going to rename that because the convention is, instead of template, usually you call it an index.html. You can call it anything you like, but that's the common convention. So now I'm going to go over here to the browser. I've set this up. This is pointing to my machine at home. Good luck. I should press that. And comes something, right? And it's not looking very interesting here.
Okay.
But something's clearly happening. And if we go over here, let's shrink this because it's too big. So we can see it all. Okay, so something's clearly happening here. If I look at the developer tools, here, you should see an error. It says it hasn't registered itself. Well, I can tell you that's even easy one to fix. You go back in here, edit this.
Okay.
And the reason is that it doesn't know.
Speak a little louder.
Sorry?
You gotta speak a little louder.
Okay. It doesn't know what our application is. That is the setup. It says change it. We call it Expo, right?
Yes.
So we say Expo. Save that. Notice there's no compiling, nothing like that going on. I just click that. And now, we'll go up. Should come. Should come. It's doing. Okay. Come on. Why isn't it working?
Because it's a demo, we're all staring at it.
Demo. This is demo. I'm taking my luck in my hands.
At any other
Oh,
time.
here's why. Here's why.
It is working.
It's saying
It is working.
it didn't file it. All right. Now let's see. No.
Ah.
Now we're getting somewhere. Okay. Now it's asking for my login. Now this version is working in my home, so I don't have the access code, verify code. A bit later on, you'll see this. But if I press the login button, then it's going to come up with this. Now what this is actually saying to me, oh, by the way, remember all these talks about cats and toasters? That is known as A toaster. So what that's telling me is that I haven't hooked up the back end. Remember, I had to write the front end and the back end? Okay, well, that's easy. Let's go back in here. And now we need to just move into this directory. Sorry.
Bit louder.
Node modules. This guy here, module.js. I'll just drag that in there. And we're going to change that to, and then to expo.js. And just need to do one more thing, and that is go back in here. Oh, sorry, no, not that. We need to go back up into expo, app.js, and look at all we have to do in here. We just have to change the app name. That's expo. And we need a title for the HTML. We're going to call that. There we go. And then it says login panel title. This is the title for that modal login panel. So it'll say this expo demo.
For anyone who hasn't clued in, this is not you're not seeing a problem or a failure to demo. This was his intent from the beginning. He's doing a nothing up my sleeve here. He's showing you right now, live in front of all of you, he's building this thing that's going to run. And it didn't take him $10 million in 18 months to do. He's doing it right now. Part of the point here is not just the superiority of the technology, technically, but speed.
We've been using this, what, 3 weeks, Rob?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And so I'll put that in, and I'll leave it at that for now. So I've changed, 5 lines, I've just put in a bit of text for those. And now let's run this baby and see what she does now. And now it should say, it's the Expo demo.
Yeah.
Log in.
Good.
And now if I try to log in, the toaster says you must enter a username.
Ah, there's a back end now.
Okay, it's got a back end. And now if I put in log, password, now we're logged in.
Be
It says
patient.
VISTA Expo demonstration. Now, if any of you were watching, I had 2 titles for this. I had one for
Demo and one for.
phones and one for other devices. So
Oh.
the browser is currently wide enough to know that it's a desktop or a tablet. And it's also saying logged in as well. And we've got this button. So now watch this. I'm going to grab the edge of that.
This is magic. Watch this.
Watch this. Oh, VISTA demo. Look, VISTA Expo. Look at the way that's changing. And the button's gone.
Instead of writing 2 different apps,
Placed in here,
2 different
and there's the button.
devices.
Yeah.
It morphs
Very
to
good.
fit
And if we take that right down to
dimensions
the
of the
size of
screen.
the phone, then that's what it will look like on your phone. Same application. All built in.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
This framework, Bootstrap, is just the most incredible thing to work in. And it is so fast to work in. Once you get it, just fast.
I mean, previously people were writing 1 for the workstation, 1 for the iPhone, maybe 1 for the iPad. That's 3 apps. Now you're at 1 app.
Now, this machine that it's a machine at home, but it's a Dewdrop machine. Do you remember Dewdrop? That's another David Wixell creation. It's a fully packaged up virtual machine with sample patient data. And we've got a new patient. So this is an application where I've said I need to select a patient. So I'll click that guy. And I'll call the select patient box. I didn't have to write any of this. It's all there in the template. Now we'll click on that. And now I'll start typing. Look at this. Every keystroke is changing that. That's doing a round trip, sending a JSON request to the back end. It's looking it up in real time, coming back and changing the menu. And that's straight off the VISTA database. This is no magic. This is a real machine working in my house back in London. Okay? And you see how fast this is, right? So I need to go there.
My burden swallow.
Need to move from here. Where's that?
Also not sure.
That's, oh, I know what's happening.
Anybody else.
In my enthusiasm, I click the tab too much. Let's log in again. Just show you this is real stuff.
Now, why did it remember your username, Rob?
That's security issues.
This is not access verified.
Huh?
That's
The
later.
access code, verify code, wrong.
You're going to see that in a little bit.
So let's look at this again. Watch this. Every single keystroke is doing a round trip to London. Right? I type $Z, up comes to this. I type another Z, it changes to this. I type space, P.
Yep.
With three keystrokes, I'm down to the one I want. Select that. Now we'll say get details. Bingo. No. Oh, no. This is actually a bug that I fixed on the machine.
You must enter your username.
Excellent security, Rob.
Yeah.
It's the brick. It's the brick. Oh, look, I've given it away now.
Oh,
no. Now you're all going to be logging into my machine.
I can see that.
Oh,
I can
yes.
see your password.
Okay.
One more time.
So your password is star.
That's
That'll fool them.
Wait,
Do you see a change in the background?
something very weird to do. Oh, okay. Content goes here. And I haven't filled this out yet. So, but we're now at a point where the developer has the basic framework, and there are other things that you can, there's optional tabs and things like that you can bring into play. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Zach. So imagine he's started from this point. So he's got these 3 files. Remember, it's just 3 files. And he's hooked them up. And now he's going to carry on building.
So the point of that part was, and when I pitched this to him as a possibility, he was at first reluctant and decided to agree. It was 30 minutes to build a browser-based application in front of an audience. So, you know, Dr. Tweed, thank you for your courage.
Yeah, let's do this.
You have 57 minutes to
Gonzales,
go.
Now we're all looking at you.
But no pressure.
Oh, sorry.
Who is he really? Which way did he go?
Before you begin, you better tell them what you're up to. Because we're all skeptical people. We've seen it all before.
You've seen it all before?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We're not gonna fall for any of this, you know, flim flam.
Do you want me to continue where Rob left off? Or do you want me to show you some code first?
Wait, line. This is your session.
Yeah.
Why don't you
How
show
about I? So he kind of left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. How about I show you some code?
Okay.
So,
Good.
as Rob said, we've been working on this for a little bit at Orville for the last 3 weeks. I don't remember where I found Bootstrap. I found Bootstrap either on, if you guys don't know, there's a company called, there's a venture capitalist company called Y Combinator. Their news, hacker news, is amazing. If you really seriously just want to stream the internet for some serious, startup content, anything, I religiously read it all day long. My internet history is only that one thing. Actually, it's the only thing that comes up when I type in my user bar. So. Anyway, so I found Bootstrap, and all of a sudden I was like, this is pretty cool. This is the, and I started learning about it. I told Rob, I said, hey, you need to look at this. I created a mock-up for him one night and sent it to him in a zip file, hard-coded tables and everything. Over the weekend, he's like, oh, that's pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. And on Monday, all of a sudden I had, pages worth of Skype chats from Rob. Okay, we're going to do this, and he's got it all hooked up already, so we have really enjoyed it. So, if you notice the login now,
Cool.
It's changed. It says access and verify code. This is actually hooked to a VISTA database. So, how about I just type in something, this, and maybe something like that, and there's your toaster. So that came back from the sign-on process. That was the same real procedure that Sequoias just called that call right there. Same layer of vagary there. You're not sure if it's the access or the verify code. We're not going to really tell you. It's just your access and verify code there doesn't match what the server has. If you leave one blank, hit enter. So it says please enter your verify code, and it does reverse for the other. So access gone. Here.
So, all well and good. Okay, now it logged me in. It logged me into the system. It says I'm logged in. Actually, let me show you this.
Is this in England, the VISTA server?
No. This one is this is my development server in Oroville.
Oh, okay.
So we're still across the VISTA state line. This is not
We
local.
can totally tell it was faster.
Yeah, it was totally faster, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
I think that's that new hyperloop, right? That guy's building.
Wasn't the same number of seconds at all.
Okay, so what that did actually is it called a remote procedure to VISTA, and what VISTA did is it returned the exact same array of data that CPRS would have gotten. But what I did was I took that array and I made a JSON object. And here's the object right here. And I apologize for the color.
Oh, white on
Can you zoom in?
green.
Bigger and bigger, Joe. So what are
You
these
tell me
things?
when you can see it.
Yeah,
I see green.
bigger in the front.
Yeah, I really apologize for the colors. It looks really good here. Okay, so what I did was I returned an object.
Get document.
Yeah, so I defined a pointer to the global, and I called it user, and I said make data that.
You're in Node.js here.
I am. I'm in the Node.js repo on my server in Oroville. And basically, you can start seeing things that maybe might make sense to you, right? DI lock time, D time, DUZ. There's a DUZ array with DUZ sub 0, 1, 2, AG lane. Those make sense to most people who are used to looking at VISTA logons, right? The display name. So I just basically, instead of Gonzales, Zach, it's kind of nice to say my actual name is actually Zach Gonzales. So see it that way, nice way. You notice this, the greeting? Same thing that Dark sees, so good afternoon.
Yep.
So now here's the interesting stuff. So I'll scroll down a little bit. And the next section within this is keys. Do some of those look familiar to people?
Yeah.
XUprog mode,
Yeah,
TTMQ.
provider.
Right, so this is doing the exact same thing that a normal login process would do. And I should point out though, this is not just sitting in some global that I'm looking at. I'm actually using the same transport global that AWD uses to send the array to JSON. It's in the %AWD session array. There's garbage collection there, so it doesn't hang out. For the life of the process, it's there. When I close, I'm done. It's gone. This is not something that I'm writing to disk someplace and storing forever. This takes care of that for me. I just request it. So anyways, I'll go down through. I got some keys in here. I got quite a few keys actually. I have a person class, primary menu. I guess I have all my secondary menus in here. Service section, UCI, volume name. So all that stuff that you would normally just get back in time process, I just came back with that one little call that I made. Okay, so now I log back in, all right? And I'll select the patient.
Well, the punchline for those who aren't programmers is all that information present means that his application knows what he's supposed to be allowed to do and not allowed to do. If you sign into somebody else, you have a totally different list of keys. It is VISTA security aware.
Correct.
Which cannot be said of many experiments with web applications for VISTA.
That is correct. That's a good point. So at the UI layer, I could have one section of my application that does pharmacy, right? But I may not have the PS keys, so I actually don't even get to see the pharmacy menu, at all. Period. And it's the way it should be.
Right.
And another thing, that JSON object is at the back end of Node.js,
Right.
not in the browser.
Right.
We don't ship that to the browser.
Correct. Yes, correct.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, so I just selected the patient, and I just came back with the demographic object. So I just basically said, so I'll show you a little bit of code in a little bit, but basically I did a GETS call. So I'm using FileMan APIs and remote procedures. So I did a GETS call, and that returns some information about this patient in VISTA. You can see a little bit of information, and if I clicked, oh hey, look at there's the patient's allergies. And that's pretty fast.
Yeah, that did a run show.
And I have a little thing in Oroville where our providers like to see all the alerts for one patient versus their own alerts. So I just returned all the alerts for this patient. Yeah.
And that fetch that you just did just there with problems.
Oh yeah. So maybe I can. Let me see if I can show you. Yes.
Just hit enter on there, so you got a bunch of white space, and do it, and go back and see the new stuff.
There we go. Well, I had to get over here so I could see it. So if I come back here, let's see if we can shrink the windows for a little bit. Yeah, you see it just roll by there? Okay, so what I was pointing out is that when you load the application, I'm not really loading all these objects.
Right.
When that application loaded, nothing's there. Not until I click something, there was some event, and I wanted you to see that object provide. And if you look, you can actually kind of make this out, right? So there's essential venous pressure for a vital. So I'll take you back into that. You know, retina displays are really nice because you get a lot of pixels, but when you hook it up to a projector, all of a sudden you're lost because you only got like 1/3 of your screen. So, sorry. so here, your vitals. I just made the call. Vitals came back, and as you can see, this is real data. I get actual hospital locations. So, vitals is a good example. So if you look at the remote procedure in the code, the remote procedure actually fetches all the vitals, and then it does its own unit. And the actual RPC actually builds the unit itself. The units aren't actually stored. So like pounds, inches, CMH, 2.0, that stuff. I walked through the code. I was really shocked. Thought it was going to be someplace, but it wasn't. There's actually a table. It basically says if it's this vital type, walks through a nice little if-then loop and or if-else loop and does it. So, good example. We were talking a little bit earlier about the business logic in the back end. So that actually took out of the call. So the remote procedure that actually goes there just fetches all that data. Now that information now is at the JavaScript layer. Just an idea. Not advocating for anything here. Just something I decided to do. Okay, so you guys got the idea of what we're doing with this application. Same look and feel, same data is coming in. Let's see here. So let's go show you some code. So you saw the object, and you can return as much or as little as you want, really. It's really the back-end developer's choice. I'm choosing to return as much as possible. A lot of times what I do is, for example, I'm working on immunizations today. So the immunization code, sorry. Still bigger?
No, yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right. So I was looking through the immunization code today, and there's not any reason on the back end that you can't just turn everything and then just pick a little bit of it out, put it in the UI. So that's what I did. If you look at the immunization, I walked through the exact same index that the PXRM index. I used that one to grab immunizations. And it gets called in a little loop on a bunch of IENs and just stuffed it into a globe.
Again, for those of you who don't know this file manager, so this is at the database level. It's just going right for the data that the application is stored.
Exactly. And then on the JavaScript side, all I said was I only really want to see the immunization name and the visit. And then so you can see here, right in here, here's the meat of it, this section right here. All that other stuff is preparing the call, making a pointer to the actual global reference, returning the global reference into an object, and then really I just say, give me the data at that location, and then the dot immunization is just a way to pull out that exact location. And so I'm just returning the name of the immunization and the visit date. A good example of something that would be a little bit bigger. So here's the object that gets returned to the problems. So that's a little bit bigger. This is one patient's problem. You saw the problems on the app. This is exactly what came back right there. And so on the front end, you can choose to show any of it or all of it. What I'm trying to show here is basically you can send as much data back, and you can show or hide as much as you want. You can send as little data back. You can show what's there.
It's flexible.
It's very flexible, indeed. I think.
So you can do the trick with the screen and shrinking and growing.
Yeah, actually, does anyone have any questions on this before? Because I do want to show it on the iPad.
What do you mean by
go.
sending back? It's actually sending back not to transaction to the database, but you're sending information from the database to your Node.js server, right? So or to your JSON document in the DOM or something like that.
Correct. Yeah, back to the browser. Yeah.
Well, not all the data is in the browser.
No. But what I'm saying is what you send back is what you choose to send back. Yeah. Exactly. And you know, in the backend module. So I should point out this code here is the backend module. This is not in what you're looking at here is not in the front end. So I do the filtering here. You can actually add another layer of filtering in the front end if you so choose.
There's two things about this strategy I want to underscore. One of them is, you see how fast it is to return massive amounts of data and then filter out just the parts you want. That's not the case with most technologies that do this sort of thing, because they've got so many middle layers and so many tiers they have to pass things back and forth between. You can actually see the latency. But here, you could be passing massive amounts of data, and we still can't see the latency, not even from the UK, because he's eliminated all those middle layers. It's almost direct from the VISTA database right onto what the user's seeing. There's a second piece about this that's crucial that doesn't immediately come to mind for people, and that is one of the problems with VISTA is the sheer volume of things we've written. Part of the reason we've written all those things, we keep writing custom things for every different possible use. For every different use, we write a new piece of code. But if you write a piece of month's code that grabs all the immunization data, then you can have JavaScript programmers writing these tiny little filters that just filter out almost all of it. And you're left with one tiny subroutine on the back end instead of dozens and dozens and dozens for different uses. It's a way to shrink down the code base of VISTA without reducing the capabilities of the system. You end up with a simpler system that's actually more powerful.
Remove complications, defeat complexity.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
That's a really good
We're
point.
down to 10%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask the
Sure.
program question? What you're showing right now is stuff that's displaying data, but it would be exactly the same if you're like entering and writing to the database.
Yeah, so this call right here, the dot underscore get document, if you change the dot underscore get to dot underscore set, and then put in within the parens an object of data, I would actually file it to a mumps global.
So sending back is kind of like it's a two-way street. Sending back from the user to write to the database, as well as sending back. There's a little bit of confusion there. So
Yeah, you use back in a case that confuses me.
It's all back to me.
So I think it's...
Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize. So yes.
No, it's just good because I think we need to make sure that you can explain this to more people because it's brilliant. So it's just a question of clarifying. That's what I was trying to do.
Okay, yeah. Most of what I do is don't explain stuff like this to people like you. I explain this to the people who are running in from the ER, who are running in from our surgical unit, who's running in from ICU, physicians and nurses who just want to say, you know what, I just had this problem and we misgave medication, or I missed the patient's vitals, or I did something, and it's because I have this whole pocket full of paper, and they pop out this gigantic stack of something, and they say, can you fix it for me? And so then I show them something like this. So I apologize. Yes, it's I have a problem. I've been told I've been too technical, so I've been working on it, trying to make it less technical. So Rick raised a point about returning as much data as possible from the mumps side, from the server side, to the node process, and eventually to the front end UI. I don't know if anyone's familiar with remote procedure that does problems in CPRS. So there's like 3 or 4 different remote procedures that actually will return problem information. You have the initial one that returns just a list of problems with IDNs and statuses, right? And I think it also, yeah, in a brief name. That's on the cover sheet. That also works again on the problem tab. But in order to see any real information about that, you have to double click it. So that actually is another callback from the client back to the server. And then there's actually another one within that to look at other information. So I started thinking, is there any really reason why you wouldn't want to just get some real data details initially, and then let the front end developer, let him or her kind of build filters for their clinicians? So that's what I've done. Is I've taken the remote procedures and I haven't rewritten them in any way. I fear the word refactor because everyone starts thinking that I'm changing something. So in parallel, what I'm doing is I'm actually making a superset of remote procedures. So if there's three, I go through the process of how do you use one application, how do you use a set of a package. And if a logical demarcation point says, these three of these four can be really grouped together because they all do some sort of, they're all a subset of one big thing, and the amount of information transmitted is not that big of a deal. I'll draw the line there, and then I basically combine them. I wrap them up into one call. So that get problem call, actually what it did is it actually did the exact same call that CPRS RPC did, produced the list, did the same one that on the problems tab that it did, it produced that list in a sorted way. And then when you double click one, you get the details. Well, that's what I was showing here. That's the details. But it never made sense to me why you wouldn't want that information initially, and then just build some sort of a view around it.
Right.
So that's kind of the work that I've been doing on the back-end node modules.
So you're not ending up with lots of different remote procedures, you're not ending up with lots of back and forth calls. You have one call, it returns everything, you pick and select what you want, and meanwhile you reduce the traffic, reduce the complexity. You end up with a more elegant, faster system.
Exactly, and this has evolved over a lot of time. I've had lots of communication with people about writing this magical silver bullet to wrap every single remote procedure in one call. The permutations are endless. There's just no way any sane developer would want to do that, and I banged my head on it for about a year. And then I had multiple conversations with Dr. Shannon from the UK, and he really kind of opened my eyes to grouping clinical data. And so that's what I began doing is with remote procedures, just taking his idea of these core headings, he calls them core clinical headings, and basically there are different collections of health information data in EHR, and I'm taking all those remote procedures that would make up those little pieces and then making one big one, or in some cases a couple little small ones, but you've gone from orders of magnitude or just completely eye-opening. You've gone from maybe 200 RPCs down to like 25 or 50. So
I want to underscore this point, and I want to make up what is. There is a shocking claim inherent in what Zach is saying, and I want to support it and underscore it so everybody hears it. And the shocking claim is, I don't think you could do much. This part's not shocking. I don't think you could do much to reduce the complexity of the database and the data structures. They probably need more fields and more relationships. But the code, that 20,000 some odd routines, I believe, and Zach probably also believes, that using an approach related to this, where you return more information, and you use common tools instead of rewriting things every time you want a different kind of output, you could shrink the VISTA database, the VISTA routine code base, by a factor of 10, while simultaneously making it faster and more flexible, capable of more things. You could make a simpler, more powerful, more featureful system.
You make it more core.
In place. Not rewriting, not replacing, not trying to do something else. It implodes upon itself and becomes more powerful. I believe that to be true. And what he's trying to demonstrate here, among all the exciting UI stuff he's demonstrating, part of what he's demonstrating is, you can see from the way he coded it that that's true. He's reduced the complexity, and yet he's got more power out of this thing.
Is there a Nobel Prize for health ed?
Not yet.
No.
I take praise in beer.
And pizza, right?
Yeah. So
Beer and pizza.
my day job is managing developers, and I do get to code a little bit, though it's getting to be very minuscule time. This has all been done on my own time at home in the evenings, using my servers, and I do have a pretty good R&D department with hundreds of docs and nurses and clinicians around the board. So, but part of that is finding new talent. So like Rob was saying, Simon's kind of popped into the community, and I've been really pushing him as far as the UI side goes, and just saying, hey Simon, let's just be super like R&D and let's try something out. And we spent 2 hours the other night talking about Nodecopter. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Nodecopter, but it's the ability to control AR drones, those little remote control helicopters with Node.js. I think everyone should check it out. It's awesome. There happens to be Simon, and then instantly Simon comes back with, yeah, well, there's this guy who has attached to a 100-round submachine gun to an AR drone. You should check it out. And he sends me back links. So that's the kind of banter that goes back and forth. But it's interesting because we're thinking way outside the box here about any type of UI. So what I've said to him is I want to push all the boundaries of UI development. So something he showed me today was this.
Is that on me?
So this is now working on an iPad.
Yeah, so so this is on my iPad here. All right. All those little squares, not quite hooked yet to the iOS portion. However, there is a library he is working on. Those are all draggable items. I can drag and drop them around. But what I want to show you first on the iPad, and then I'll go back and show you the drag and drop, is the really cool portion. So as a clinician or a provider, I'm piloting this new noting technology here. So you can imagine you get some patient information up top, and where it says the draggable items menu, maybe you have a source list that's like the problems, and you want to say, I'm creating a note, but I only really want to include certain chronic problems or acute problems in my episodic care note. I'll grab one and drag it down into here where it says drag items down there where it's a little bit, that black square. Maybe the next menu item is lab. Well, I only want to grab the lab results that really mean something to that one diagnosis. And then how about there's a med? Well, there's a med that actually is part of that comorbidity. So I'm going to grab that and drag it into my note. Now I've just created 3 separate items. And on the back end, what happens is when you store that, you get outlines. Problems, meds, labs. Store that. But as the clinician, you don't have to click a bunch of boxes through reminder dialog template, load in all this stuff, and it makes an insane amount of RPC calls. It's crazy. So then I've gone through my history and physical. I've gone through some sort of acute, interview of the patient. Then I click on the Notes tab, and then I make some sort of objective or subjective note here. And at the very end, so imagine, put on your thinking caps or imagination caps here. What if there was a 2D diagram of the patient here, and I was able to circle something like this and say, make some sort of a markup comment down there. Or imagine that. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's actually my signature. But I get teased that I write like a doc. But imagine the possibility of being able to load in a static image into your note. Okay, so this library that we're using actually stores this as a PNG or JPEG or bitmap or something like that. So when you save this back, you'll store it back indexed into the episodic care of this patient, so that when you bring it back up, you can bring this back up and you can actually look at what you diagrammed. You can print these things out.
Great.
This is all just done from a mobile device. You don't have to really, you don't have to use the Citrix application. You don't have to use a VMware application. You don't have to be saddled with layers upon layers upon layers of slowness. Right? This is launched and you saw me log in. You saw the application was accessed and verified code is secure. It's using the exact same mechanism this VSecureS is using. It's using the exact same mechanisms to select patients. All that stuff. So the last demo little piece that I'll do is I do want to show you drag and drop because I think it does kind of hammer home what capabilities are on the UI.
I was sold on the node copy.
The node copter? Yeah, man, the node copter is awesome.
We'll bring one next year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a track just on node copter.
Raisins. Drop cookies on people.
So going back to something I said in the panel session, so Simon has come from, he's just finished his degree in 3D animation aimed at the games industry, and difficult to get jobs and so on, and that's when I said, well, how about seeing if we can get Zach to get you some work. And so one of the things we've been focusing on very much is applying the mindset of the games player and designer, which he's been studying, to say, well, how could we, what kind of things could we do at the UI level that would really improve speed and fun as much as anything of using an interface for Doc. And part of, so show the drag and drop.
Yeah.
We'll come back to the next kind of bit after that.
Okay, so like I was saying, you could do. Our plan is to do this off on the iPad. There is a little bit of on an iOS or a touch device. When you tap and hold, it actually launches a secondary menu. So we've identified a couple of JavaScript libraries that will prevent that and allow you to actually click and drag an item on the screen on a touchpad. pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's not hooked in yet. It's going to take us a little, it's going to take time and a little bit more work to figure that out. However, imagine that, so we're going back to my note, and imagine that this is like, a med, and I just dropped it there.
I didn't see that.
Well, how about I drag item number 5 over here? Yeah, it's really super fast, and if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. And no time.
By the way, there's no mouse tracking in this application. We turned that off. Remember the old days where the mouse actually moved and you could see a shadow?
Oh, cool.
So, and here's the beauty of it. Say, maybe you got them out of order. I can drag within my drop zone. That's pretty cool, right? And then I do want to show this. So if I right click here, I double click, sorry. I don't know if anyone's familiar with a company called Twitter. They also made this thing called Bootstrap. Evan Williams also has this thing called Medium.com. Medium.com is a really cool blogging platform. They just opened it up to anybody across the world now today. So what we did was we were looking for, my goal with this was to use as much open source products that are out there today.
Jesus.
Not rewrite anything, but leverage what the rest of the world is doing because they're really kicking our butts. So that's where I've gone with this application. As much as I can possibly use from the rest of the world, the rest of the IT world, something. So I double click this, and now I have markup. I can make it bold, I can underline it, I can put in a link. I can make the options are endless, and this is totally configurable. This is built on Medium's editor stack, so you can customize this. It's open source. It's very, very cool stuff. So that's kind of all the UI tricks. Yeah.
So when you say customize, can you turn off cut and paste? Because you're not supposed to be cutting and pasting into notes.
Yes. So when I say customize at the developer level.
Right.
So for the developer to build these tools, maybe you want to be able to make it red,
Right.
or maybe you want to add an ordered list. Like that type of stuff is maybe customized. I don't necessarily mean customized for the actual user. However, yeah, cut and paste. They can cut and paste today in their note.
They're not supposed to?
They're not supposed to. Yeah, well, yeah. So there's a difference between what you're not supposed to do and what you can do.
Right. Can we
Yeah.
leverage our technology?
Yes, yeah, we can. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So customization here is developer level customization for building the best UI possible. I should point out this is really just out there stuff right here. So like I said, these are ideas of what we're thinking.
Keystroke access, I'll just explain.
Yeah. So keystroke access. Yeah.
So Simon was saying that if you're a game player and you're skilled as you get skilled in the game, you'll start not wanting to do this kind of drag and drop stuff. All right.
So if you're as you get experience playing a game like EVE Online, which I know is one of Simon's favourites, I have no clue how it works. And he said, so they stop dragging stuff around because you'll get killed like that. You'll lose everything. So instead, you use the keys, and there's just combinations of keystrokes. And so these guys are flying around with this stuff, flying around space, and just on the keys. And so couldn't we apply that kind of idea, here's games thinking, coming into the UI for the busy clinician? It made me think back to one of the very early days back in the 80s when I was developing the Brawl Mouse, and one of the applications I had to deal with was histopathology. And I went down and was talking with them and finding out what they do. And they said, look, Rob, you've got to understand, our technicians spend all their time looking down the microscope, and they're doing cell counts, and they're counting them over here. They can't afford to go over here, because going back, they've lost where they were. So it's got to be keystrokes. And that reminded me of this, exactly the same idea. So even though this is a web, where you think, oh, it's all mouse and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't have to be.
And that's good.
No,
That
it's
makes
good.
it accessible for people who have mobility issues.
Absolutely.
Well,
so, back to Zach.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
heads down typists that can't use the mouse.
Right.
Well, and some specialties or some practices actually really work better when you don't take your eyes off the keyboard. Or
Exactly.
off the screen. So that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of what we're doing here is just trying to give every single tool possible out there to the developer and say, craft your UI. At the end of the day, this is just sending JSON back and forth. And the templating, the UI tools, all this stuff is just us showing you what's possible. This application here is just an idea of what something could look like. You could do anything with this. All you have to do is just make the call, you get a JSON object back, and then it's at the freedom of your developers, your clinicians, to craft it however you want.
Yeah. So sit down with them. This is our toolkit of UI toys. Right. How do we put together your UI specific for you?
Exactly. And it can be different for everyone. The beauty of having the template is it kind of all has that same look and feel. You know.
So can you show the keystrokes doing the?
Are the keystrokes hooked up, Simon, that one?
I don't think they are.
Okay. All right.
But you can do that drag and drop just by a few keystrokes and they go bang, 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 bang.
Yeah. We were playing with it the other night.
Yeah. So it does work, honest.
That's good. That's fantastic.
Thoughts?
I have one question.
Yeah.
And I don't want to detract from this here.
Yes.
I don't want to detract from this because this is sufficient. But I've still been, because I've been introduced to Raphael's federated data, I need to know before I dive into this, where's that picture? And if you can't answer it now, that's fine, but I just want to see that approach looked at. Could it be a tab on this where his federated data is there? Or is that changed the JSON?
No, absolutely. And I think he's here. I was hoping Raphael would be here to have seen it. But he isn't. Never mind. So this is just JSON. So we're moving JSON around. Okay. So imagine that node interface is just hooked into the JSON LD layer, and now you're returning a graph. To the developer, it's a JSON object. Okay, it's a graph, but it's a JSON object, and now he can imagine it and realize it in whatever form we need to show it. Yeah, it's fully compatible. This just goes, and if we're storing, if the graph store is either a separate JSON database modeled into cache or whatever, or it's you're doing it in real time straight off the globals and the data in the VISTA system. It really won't matter. I mean, at this point it's JSON. Then we can see what we can do once we've got the JSON.
Because you can use this technology to federate or aggregate data.
Yeah. Do you remember when I showed you all the way to hook it up? So there's the federation.
Well,
JSON-based federation.
Well, I think that's awesome. Other than for the non-VISTA systems that he wants to federate.
Okay. So remember, it's pure web services at the Node.js layer. Again, go back to what I said. There's a module for everything. In fact, Josh Mandel, the smart apps guy from Harvard, he's doing all his stuff in Node.js as well, Mongo, and the smart apps stuff are modules that you can load into Node.js. So this stuff will all just clip together.
Wow.
Yeah, it's important to understand that the work that they've done here has not been done in isolation. We talk a lot about Connor's work, Raphael's work, George Lilly's work. We talk about the work that Kevin Meldrum and them are doing. We look at the whole thing in terms of, they start out as separate development efforts, but we know we're trying to get to a single coherent organic architecture. This is very much, to us, this has come together over the last year, right? I mean, a year ago, this wasn't, you had not written anything.
3 weeks ago this.
3 weeks ago, this didn't exist, right? The approach is coming together and picking up critical mass as they try things out, learn which are the dead-end alleys and which are the things that are the most productive. And so you're going to see, over the next few months, all of these pieces that we're talking about are all going to cohere into this new architecture. We can see it, we just can't explain it yet.
Is it Osera that you will have that community kind of organized, or is this a different way?
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. Like Rob said, it's been 3 weeks to start doing this.
Maybe there's too much Osera politics to.
Anyways, I started thinking about this in January at the VISTA community meeting, and like I said, I've been banging my head on my desk up until about 3 weeks ago. As far as community and sharing, at the end of the week, I'm going to make my GitHub repo public, and then all that code will be there. So,
Thank you.
yeah, and I plan to send an email out onto there's a nice little embarrassing bug that I won't fix, but she'll mention, so.
Yeah, this is all compatible with use. I mean, Osera gives us a place where we can talk about this stuff and share this stuff. There's no incompatibility here at all. This is, in fact, this is what Osera is for in action. And people go out, they innovate, they come up with these ideas, and then we bring them out together and we begin to play with them together. So you're going to see a lot of action on this in the time that's coming. Part of, again, we want to underscore, what you're seeing here is not the result of a $150 million contract through T4 to, who knows who. This is not gigantic sums of money being given to enormous procurement organizations that have, all these processes. This is what happens when you get the golden pair. We talked about Back to the Future. Is it plausible or not? Well, it just happened. So it's not just plausible, it's efficient. This model works. But you don't have to take my word for it, it's right here. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Now I can't ask these questions of Rob because, the answer to the question, how many years, Rob, did it take you to get to the point where this could happen? You're not going to walk away going, well, that's easy. We'll just have 100 people like him any moment now. It's decades, right? We're talking decades. But Zach, when did you learn mumps?
What did we decide the other night, David? 2008?
March 2008.
March of 2008.
Yeah, we had a little class, and we taught him mumps. He didn't know mumps. How about JavaScript?
3-4 months ago? Right, yeah, because EWD Lite was
EWD Lite came out, I did the training in Fairfax, it was that March, and during that training, the light bulb went on, I've been doing it all wrong, this is the way to do it, and then I wrote it like 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later.
March, April-ish?
This year.
9 months ago, so maybe 8 months ago?
So 8 months of JavaScript, and much of which is just playing with it, right? A lot of it is trying things out.
All of it's trying things out. Yeah, yeah.
You mean you don't have a degree in JavaScript? You didn't pay $45,000 or whatever it is to learn how to do this over 8 years?
Actually, no, I use a thing called Code Academy. So Code Academy had this really awesome things where they have different languages. Python's one of them, JavaScript's one of them, and I think Ruby, maybe? I don't remember the third one. But I used Code Academy, and I took the Code Academy Year Challenge, and that's where I started. And I'm actually obviously not done with it.
And when did you learn Bootstrap?
Bootstrap was 3 weeks ago when I found it. And that was by chance.
I see Marina has a question. Come right there.
You reminded me of something. What do you think the possibility is of making a Code Academy mumps class?
I think it's awesome. Actually, I think we should, and I would go one step further and say a Code Academy VISTA class. Because part of what I think is really powerful about the interaction between a person who's a Vistanista is that you just don't know mumps, but you know healthcare associated with mumps. And when I think of this, I think of healthcare, just not the application.
I heard the issue was putting a compiler in the browser. Your thoughts on how you make that work?
I'm not a compiler guy. I won't pretend to be at all. I'm definitely a data
has a
guy.
thought on that.
But however, I'm sure there's a brain in here who could probably figure out if not 2 or more.
So, so the idea of putting a browser, a mumps, kind of okay, so there are mumps interpreters that are 90K. If you can simulate a 6502 in the JavaScript browser, you can definitely simulate a mumps. But nonetheless, probably more reasonable to actually do something like a WebSocket back to a mumps system that already exists. That way you're not inventing the wheel, you're just taking the stuff from the browser, send it down the pipe, let mumps do its thing, and then read it back from the pipe.
Is that something anybody here knows how to do? That's outside
I
of
think
my-
Rob has some clues, and, Oscar probably has some clues too.
Well, you won't hear what you want to hear from me, so I'll say, please don't. That's the wrong way to do this. This is all the next generation of developers. Just go with the JavaScript guys. They're out there. You know, use my son as an example. He's only been working with Zach for those 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And look what he's doing already.
But don't we still need people who can read mumps?
Well, this is abstracting it.
Right.
So Zach's looking after that. Once it's abstracted, now it's available as JavaScript functions. Now the JavaScript guys just see JSON. These functions that return JSON. They don't need to. Simon doesn't know or care how that works. Right? And the people you need most of is the guys to do this Imagineering, this stuff.
But that doesn't stop, that's not the idea of the Code Academy. I think that
Oh, yeah.
would still be
We
really
need them.
powerful for the few that want to be exposed to mumps. That's going to
I
work.
think we should do,
Right.
we should do.
Oh, do both. Absolutely.
Yeah,
But-
okay.
but we do need to train more mumps guys to look after this big box. But you don't need hundreds of them.
Right.
Thousands. We need, if we had 1,000 guys that can do this kind of, imagine what we could do if we could, and you know, I believe it's this kind of stuff that makes healthcare IT cool and sexy for those guys to say. And I always say to people, you know, I can go back to the Royal Morrison Hospital in London. I left there in 1990, and they're still running code that I wrote, and that's saving people's lives. You know, that makes me feel that I made a difference. You know? If I was just in the games industry and you know, wrote a better way of shooting down an alien, you know, when I'm then my age, I look back, you know, really make a difference. That's, you know, that's really cool if you can get, you know, bring young kids into that.
I would add one thing is that I would definitely include the healthcare piece of bumps.
Yes.
Because without that, you can be a great web programmer, but if you don't understand VISTA, there's no way you're going to get at that data. So I would highly recommend, you know, some sort of a hybrid. Even if you want to just call it bumps, but throw that VISTA level healthcare information in there. It's invaluable.
So what are you doing for the summer? Maybe you can write that.
Before you ask that question,
Oscar's been waiting.
Actually, I wouldn't just make it a mumps course, but maybe mumps and FileMan or something like that, because understanding FileMan is critical to understanding VISTA. Now, the other interesting thing is that virtual machines are so light and so easy. I've actually heard of a virtual machine that runs in a browser. I heard a rumor about this, I'm not 100% sure. But you're putting a virtual machine in a browser and then actually running VISTA and FileMan in that virtual machine.
Really?
Pretty easy.
Wow.
And even if you don't have a virtual machine that runs in a browser, I can actually set up a virtual machine that moves in about 3 seconds flat on pretty much any host. So
I saw it.
Well,
I saw
yeah,
it.
yeah, you saw that.
Cool. David.
Once more for David. All right, here we go.
Cool. I think we need, when we're talking about in a browser or whatever, we need to have the context that Zach was talking about. Code Academy is a particular software system where you write code in the browser and then you test it and see if it works. And, it has color highlighting and all this kind of thing. It's a different thing than teaching somebody how to run a virtual machine. When you're talking about Code Academy, you're talking about just with a browser, you're able to learn about code. And it's not complicated for the person. When they first start off, all they have to know is how to click on the front. Go to this URL and we'll choose what language you want and you're done. So that's specifically for Code Academy and teaching. It's a different issue than confusing matters by talking about virtual machines or not. And yes, you can run a Linux kernel, and I've done it in a JavaScript browser. Probably.
So there are some things to underscore here. Obviously, I've highlighted the thing about the fact that even a very small number of people with even just a little bit of training can accomplish amazing things if they don't lard up the process and, just, oh my God. And likewise with technology, don't pile enormous piles of technology on a problem that fundamentally is better solved when it's elegant. The less that's there, the more you can do. It's always been, I'm sorry that George Timson isn't here, because he'd be nodding here. He has always believed that power comes from terseness. The less you say, but the more carefully you pick it, the more power you get out of it. This is the power of poetry, right? And there is a poetry to properly constructed architecture. Anybody who's been doing architecture a long time knows it when they see it. It's like art, right? And so it's why, for the last 20 years, those of us who have been doing this forever could look at these plans that come out of central office and tell at a glance that that's never going to fly. You can tell just from the complexity, just from the complications, just from the number of layers, just from the number of technologies. Like, it's not a poem. If it's not a poem, it's not going to fly. The original VISTA architecture is a poem. It's very, very elegant. And this is elegant. To me, this is a poem. I mean, so kudos to you, sir. And the breakthrough for me was 4 years ago. When was it you and I had our conversation? It was when you got the terminal emulation built in. Because that was the point at which he had a persistent connection between the web browser and the back end. And with a persistent connection, you get the possibility of two-way communication, not just always a browser-initiated things. Too much of the modern UIs that we generate that look so pretty make the system be too passive, too much like a machine. And the person has to think of all the things and do all the things and know all the things. In the old roll and scroll environment, part of the power was that you're in the back end, he has control of your terminal, and so the system can decide to tell you things and initiate activities. The fact that it could be a two-way initiation made it more like a dance between equals. And web browsers, as long as it was always HTTP, always had the limitation that you couldn't do much with it. You could show stuff, or you could do these limited forms of updates of the database, but it wasn't the same as when you could get a persistent connection. Because now, theoretically, we could have a protocol fire in the background to say that a prescription has been ordered.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And you make it appear.
Toaster thing pop down. You could do exactly something like that. I mean, you saw the little red toaster thing pop down when I logged in, correct?
Right.
You could do something like that, exactly. Drug-to-drug interaction.
I have to type in something new to refresh.
So exactly, you don't have to hit refresh. You don't have to hit refresh patient data. Patient gets admitted to a new ward instead of having to say refresh data and select the word you want to check. Anyone does that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now it would just change.
But it toasts you and tells you why.
Exactly. Yeah. You can send back any about information you want.
And that would be a great way to stop alert fatigue.
Yes. Completely.
You can change the animation.
You no longer log in with this number of notifications and have to go through them.
So, as if that wasn't enough, one of the things I didn't show you was that master Node.js process that's sitting waiting for WebSocket connections from browsers. It's also got a socket listener listening on a port that you define. It's a 10,000 by default, doesn't matter which it is. And that is accessible. There's a secret password known to the node process. And any other process that is privileged enough to know that password can send a JSON stringified string through that port. So that could be, it's just, if it was a GTM cache process, just open the port, write that string. Or if it was another Node.js process or some other process, a Java one or a .NET one, it doesn't matter. As long as you can open a port and push a string in, you can say there's 3 destinations you can assign to that message when you push that message into that port. You can say by application, so you say to the schedulers, so all the schedulers bang see that message. To all, so everybody sees the message of the day. Or by session values. In the back end, you've got these session values. Using that, you can just literally send the message to one user. So what would you use that for? So imagine one scenario, the clinician is by the bedside with his iPad, the patient is hooked up to some instrumentation, and some devices is measuring the vital signs or something like that. And that's being picked up by that interface, and that is feeding into that port every time it's got a new value, to the all people running this application, and there in real time it's getting graphed, and he's seeing in real time his life signs. This doesn't need Any other rocket science? This is the way to
Just
do
lucky,
it.
I guess.
So just do it. And it's real time.
So there's a way of expressing the challenge that we have in trying to modernize Vista that I think is illuminating. And that is why do we have this problem of 20,000 routines that somehow have to be shifted from locked into a terminal to be capable of doing modern UIs? Why do we have that problem? Not just in some philosophical sense, but actually, how did we get stuck there? And the way we got stuck there is that we had a development lifecycle and an architecture that was so productive that a small number of people could generate vast quantities of code in a very short time. I mean, you really have to think it through. The original Underground was 12 guys. Really, 12 guys beat the enormous organization that was trying to contract out and that had, state-of-the-art people bidding on contracts and trying to deliver their very best programmers for millions of dollars. And these 12 guys working in the field beat them because they were so productive that nobody could match them. And the problem with productivity is that you generate results. And later you outgrow those results. And now you have a vast sea of things that you need to modernize. You see the problem in a nutshell when expressed that way? Success breeds failure, right? So there is a thumbnail measure you can use to say whether any proposal to modernize Vista is going to work. And that is it at least as fast to make finished UIs as it was to generate the ones that we already have? If it's any slower, you have no hope. It has to match it or be faster. And all of these proposals that we've been seeing for years are all slower. If we get just enough people and enough teams and massive armies of this and that, it's like, you're not going to go anywhere. You've got to have something that's so fast that one guy in a basement can churn this out in 3 weeks. This is why I saved this for the end. Right? I asked if he had something to show. He showed me what he said, and what did I say? I said, I want to make you the anchor spot. I want this to be the thing, and I want to put a ballyhoo title on it, because I truly believe that this is the level of speed that we need if we're going to modernize Vista in short order. And that the resulting technology, the fact that it works, that it's so portable, that it's both mobile and web at the same time, that it reforms itself, that it has the connections, that it allows you to maintain all the strengths of the existing Vista, it means it's unfolding new order from the existing order at high speed. That's why I think this is our future.
And it's even got toasters.
And it's even got toasters. Final comments from our two presenters?
No, I would just encourage everyone to seriously look outside the walls of what you do today, right now at your office, and look for inspiration from anywhere. So that, most of us came from that.
Thank you, Zach. Dr. Tweed?
I just hope we closed your show appropriately.